Welcome, welcome. Before we get started, I want you to take a moment to really wake up. My entire goal through all my endeavors is to get you high. I want you to, just for a few moments, set aside all your other plans and responsibilities. I promise they'll all still be waiting for you when you're done watching this. You're watching this video within a context, a story about the flow of your day that is unique to you. Allow yourself to say, for the next few moments, I'm off duty. I'm going to allow myself to stop planning and worrying and problem solving just for a few minutes. You clicked onto this video for one reason or another, maybe random scrolling or mere curiosity, or you are generally wanting to learn something about yourself, something that I guarantee you has the power to change everything about your life. Yes, I know how heavy that sounds, and I don't say those words lightly. For the next few moments, allow yourself to simply watch the clouds on the screen. There's nothing to do right now. Sit and quietly observe. If you find your mind wandering, asking questions like, well, how long do I have to do this? This is dumb. This is boring. I invite you to take a breath and bring your awareness back to your center, to the moment unfolding. So maybe it's boring. Allow yourself to just be bored if that's the case. You don't need to do something special, no special breathing technique. Breathe normally and just observe. That right there is what it's all about. Being able to drop your inner dialogue at will and to be present. It's so simple, the mind doesn't know what to do with it. If you can learn to drop your storyline and return to the present moment whenever you desire, that freedom will change every aspect of your life for the better. A mantra can manifest a bridge that connects us to those mystical states of awareness we all crave. So today, let's talk about mantras and how powerful they can be to achieving this freedom to enter higher states of consciousness at will. A mantra, we're going to discover, is essentially a pacifier for a baby that won't stop crying. As always, get comfortable, smoke 'em if you got 'em, and get ready for today's episode of Conscious Migration. First and foremost, let's review my take on implementing any formal techniques to enter the freedom and power available to us in the present moment, which is, by definition, always here and available to us. You can reach states of total enlightenment, full present moment awareness, Buddhahood, Christ consciousness, whatever you want to call it, without ever once implementing a special diet, a yoga routine, a fancy breathing technique, gathering special crystals or burning incense or using mudras or even reciting mantras. Anyone who tells you different is selling you something. In the end, the price to enter these higher states of consciousness is always going to be the same cost. One way or another, you have to be able to allow your awareness to migrate away from the noise of the mind, away from the inner dialogue, all of the planning, your worrying, away from the constant and often obsessive commenting about everything, and let it return to its natural resting place, full, boundless awareness. Whenever I speak of meditation, that is what I'm personally referring to, your ability to let your attention return to its natural state, the present moment as it unfolds. So, As most of you know, I've been researching these states of consciousness for well over 35 years or more, and I've been learning and communicating to whoever will actually listen to me what can transpire in these states, from lucid dreaming to the out-of-body experience to instantaneous healing and far, far beyond. One thing I can still struggle with, though, is getting out of my own head. Especially if, say, I've been working all day and I've had to do a lot of problem solving or number crunching, or I've been dealing with a lot of drama from other people. It can be hard to come down and pull back from all that churning and activity. Once the mind is in command and it's been spinning and spinning, trying to solve some puzzles, or it's working out some relationship problems with friends or coworkers or partners, it doesn't want to stop. It wants to just keep going. It wants to keep crunching. So when I go directly from that busy, efficient mode to utter silence and passive observance of the forever unfolding moment, my mind will fight back. It says, you can't turn me off now. I'm in the middle of figuring out how to deal with that idiot at work and how I'm going to pay all my bills this month. And by the way, I still have to figure out what I'm eating for dinner. And on and on. It's like trying to make an enormous leap from one ledge to another. So when I'm facing a problem like this, where quieting my mind feels like I'm trying to tame a wild animal, I build a little temporary bridge to smooth out the transition from spinning madness to utter peace. This bridge is a mantra. The word mantra is derived from the Sanskrit root man, which means to think. And we can date the use of mantras in spiritual and religious practices well back before 1000 BC. And I don't want to get off track here. I'm going to spare you a history lesson on the use of mantras throughout various spiritual and religious and meditation practices from around the globe over the centuries. You are welcome to dig further into their history, the many perspectives and deeply held beliefs surrounding the reciting of certain words, phrases, and poems to enter a divine state of awareness. But for our purposes here, I want to keep our focus on how you can make immediate practical use of mantras and why they work, because that's also very important to understanding them. So when I find myself in this situation where I want to meditate, I need to meditate, but I just cannot seem to pull my attention away from the obsessive spinning, I implement a mantra. Personally, I use a short phrase. As I'm walking, because I mainly do walking meditations, see my other videos on meditation techniques if you like, I'll begin to quietly repeat to myself, I am awake, I am awake, I am awake. I'll repeat that over and over until I've managed to sustain my awareness in the present moment on my own. And then I'll drop it. I only use a mantra to cross that bridge. Once it's served its purpose, you need to then put it down. Don't just keep using a mantra over and over obsessively. Now that is just one of the several phrases I'll use. Find the one that brings you back to your center, back to your present moment, your highest self. I'll sometimes repeat, I am here, I am now, I am here, I am now. Or if I'm feeling a little ill, I'll repeat, I am healed, I am healed. And here's the thing. Your mantra can absolutely be an ancient magical phrase from the Vedic philosophies. It can be something some guru has handed down to you personally. And here's what confuses a lot of people at first. A mantra can also be utter gibberish. In fact, I would argue that gibberish can even be more effective than an intelligible phrase. I think you'll see why by the end of this discussion once we kind of flush all of this out. So what's going on? Why do mantras work? Think of the mind, and by mind, I don't just mean your actual gooey gray matter. I'm talking about the final product of the brain, an ever-changing picture of what that thinking paints of the world you live in. If your brain is a noun, an actual object that we can see and touch and analyze, then the brain is an action, the verb, if you will. It's really a very abstract concept, which is in many ways a constant reflection of who you are and the world you live in. By thinking, the mind is constantly being built and rebuilt, analyzed and revised. It's how we evolved. The better your brain is with making an accurate map of you, your body, your environment, the safer you are. But when the thinking stops, what becomes of the mind? It doesn't have an independent, concrete existence like the brain does. Its existence depends on a constant flow of thought. Our mind is an abstraction that feeds on processing and organizing information. In fact, it doesn't really know what else to do beyond work. Again, the mind is an action, like running. Well, what happens to the running when the person stops? Does that sound like an illogical question? Because it should. But that's the confusion that results when we identify with our mind. We mistakenly identify who we are, what we are, with an action. And I would argue that that primary mistake leads to a domino effect of wrong assumptions about who we are, what this world even is, and what our place is within it. So the mind, out of ignorance, out of misidentification, fears this state of not doing. If there isn't a problem for the mind to solve, to work on, some important action to carry out, it'll find one or even manufacture one to avoid the terrifying chaos of inaction. It only understands work and action. To be at rest does not compute, which is why so many of us can't stand it when it's too quiet. We think of silences as uncomfortable. This is why meditation secretly terrifies most of us. It's why as soon as we have even a few moments of quiet, we're searching for our phone. Feed me, it's saying. Feed me, look at me, I want entertainment, I want to chew on something. As children, especially here in the West, we may be taught how to think and how to approach problems rationally and how to organize our world, but we aren't taught how not to think. You're taught how to pick up the tool, but not how to put it down. So we move through life under the false assumption that the brain needs to be chattering on 24/7. This is not true, and it's driven us mad. This, above else, is what is at the root of our collective insanity and ultimately our self-destruction. Now, I know that sounds like hyperbole to some of you. Sometimes I wish it was. But learning these skills are every bit as important as all the other survival skills. When you try to meditate and quiet the internal dialogue, it's like you've suddenly cut the brain off from its supply of information it's addicted to crunching down. So, as I said earlier, a mantra is ultimately a pacifier for a baby that won't stop crying. The mind cannot stand not chewing on something. So, fine, so be it. Give it something to chew on so you can get some peace. You're not giving it something that has any real meat to it. You're not giving it another puzzle to solve, you know. This is not nutrition for the mind. It's a rubber bone for a barking dog. It's a temporary tool to give the mind something to repeat, like a broken record, so your consciousness can slip away beyond the limits of the chatting mind and into full awareness of the moment, which is bliss. When you escape the cage the mind constantly spins around you, the freedom is bliss. When my mind is repeatedly pulling me back into its clutches over and over again when I am trying to meditate, I'll just start saying to myself over and over, I am awake, I am awake, I am awake. Stay focused on those words and let your attention surrender into the deeper and deeper meaning of those words. I am awake. Keep repeating that to yourself over and over. It might seem a little weird at first if you have no experience with a technique like this, but that's okay. What you'll probably find is that it'll work like a charm for a while, but then the mind is going to get bored with this, just like a baby with a pacifier in his mouth who soon realizes, wait a minute, Mom, I've been tricked. There's no milk coming out of this thing. With this thing in my mouth, I can't even scream and cry anymore. You'll feel the mind going kind of like, well, this is stupid. Why am I saying the same thing over and over again? I don't want to just repeat this. Give me something harder to do. I know. Let's think about that problem you're having, with your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. And that's when you pull your attention back to the mantra, I am awake, or whichever phrase works for you. I personally don't believe there is a magic mantra for you. I'd say the magic mantra, if there is such a thing, is the one that manages to keep your attention in the present moment the best. As a side note, something to think about. Some people, including myself, believe that the very idea of magic words, of magic spells, for good or for evil, originated from the use of mantras by the real shaman, by the real gurus who knew the truth behind them and the power they could wield. But the notion of magic spells was a total misinterpretation of the real power they held. And that confusion resulted in these insane ideas that somehow it was the words themselves that carried the potential to lift a person into heaven or into hell. Even today, we have set aside certain words we call curse words, based on the superstitious notion that words in and of themselves could carry a curse, some supernatural power. So remember that the point of using a mantra is not to get better at using a mantra. It's a tool. Don't lose sight of the real goal. You're trying to quiet the mind so you can rest the full scope of your consciousness on the moment as it unfolds. That's where the real magic is. It's not about the tools you use to get there. Don't get hung up on any of the tools or techniques that help you get to enlightenment. Use a mantra to shut up your mind, but you eventually have to drop the repetition of the mantra as well. In order to fully be in the present, you have to remain in a state of pure observation without action. Even the tiny ripple of action it takes to repeat, I'm awake, even that's too much. Each time you enter full, boundless consciousness, drop everything, even the tools you brought along to get you there. Since the beginning of written history, philosophers and gurus and poets from around the globe and every walk of life have all said in one way or another that we can only enter heaven empty-handed. All right, I think that's enough inspiration to set some of you on the right track if you want to experiment with mantras. And I'd love to hear from any of you who try to work with these techniques, what you've observed, what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Or if you have questions for me, write them in the comments section below, and I promise I will get around to you eventually. And if you're enjoying this content of mine, hit that button and consider subscribing to my channel. That tells YouTube that there is an intelligent audience out there for off the beaten path discussions like this. So until next time, everyone, peace and love.